Clover eats breakfast every single morning. Then, a little while later, Clover eats breakfast again. Same rabbit, same twitchy nose. Technically, the nutrients from the same meal getting a second chance. If you have ever owned a pet rabbit, you already know exactly where this is going, because you have caught your own rabbit doing something that looks, to a human, completely disgusting. Clover bends down low and eats something straight from her own body. Not vegetables, not pellets from a bowl. Something your brain immediately files under wrong and quietly hopes nobody else in the room just saw. Your first thought is probably gross. Your second thought might be, is she sick? Should I stop this? Here is the twist nobody explains at the pet store. If you actually managed to stop Clover from doing this every single day for good, Clover would not become a cleaner rabbit. Clover would become a malnourished one. In some documented cases, rabbits deprived of this habit slowly decline, even with a full bowl of fresh hay sitting untouched right beside them. That disgusting habit isn't dirty at all. It's an essential part of how Clover stays healthy and alive. So here's exactly what we're getting into over the next few minutes. You're going to find out why there are actually two completely different kinds of rabbit poop, and why confusing them is one of the most common mistakes new owners make. You're going to go inside Clover's gut and meet the organ that quietly runs like an all-night factory, doing some of the most important work in her digestion. You're going to learn what happens to real pet rabbits when this system breaks down, often for reasons no owner would ever suspect. And right at the end, we're comparing Clover to a cow, a horse, and honestly, to you. Because it turns out evolution pushed all four of you toward different solutions to the same digestive challenge. Stick around for that last part. It might change how you think about your own dinner tonight. Let's start with the mix-up. Look inside almost any rabbit's cage and you'll find two kinds of little pellets scattered around. Small, dry, round ones, everywhere, all the time. And soft, dark, shiny, clustered ones that look almost like tiny grapes, usually gone within minutes of appearing. Most owners assume both are the same thing. Just poop, just waste. Nothing worth a second look. That assumption is the blind spot, and it's a bigger one than it sounds. Those two pellets are not the same product. One is finished waste, the true leftover, with most of the useful nutrients already removed. The other isn't garbage at all. It's a package, a soft, nutrient-rich parcel produced by Clover's digestive system, meant to be eaten one more time. Owners who witness a rabbit eating this second type often panic, assume something is medically wrong, and rush to intervene. It's a question veterinarians hear surprisingly often. But here's the blind spot laid bare. We're judging Clover by human bathroom standards, when her body is running on a completely different rule book. What looks like an accident to us is, to Clover, a scheduled harvest. Quick pause for a fun one before we go further in. Rabbits aren't even the only animal running this trick. Guinea pigs do it too. So do several other rodents. If you've ever owned a guinea pig and caught it in the act, you weren't watching a malfunction. You were watching a remarkably similar recycling program, just running on a different chassis. And here's a naming quirk that tells you almost everything. You'll sometimes see cecotropes referred to as night feces. And it's not a poetic name, it's a practical one, borrowed straight from watching the clock alongside the rabbit. A healthy rabbit typically produces these batches once or more each day, and does it so quietly and so efficiently that most owners go months without ever actually catching the moment. Clover, in other words, is a bit of a stealth operator. Alright, let's actually go inside and see how the recycling plant works. Layer 1. The fiber problem. Grass and hay are packed with cellulose, a tough plant fiber. Like other mammals, Clover doesn't produce the enzyme needed to break cellulose apart on her own. On the first pass through her gut, only the easy stuff gets absorbed. Sugars, a few starches, the quick, convenient nutrients. The tough fiber just keeps moving, unopened, like a locked box nobody in the building has the key to. Layer 2, the recycling vat. Instead of throwing that locked box away, Clover's body redirects it into an organ called the cecum, a large pouch sitting right where the small intestine meets the large one. It's genuinely enormous by rabbit standards, making up one of the largest and busiest parts of her digestive system. Inside, trillions of bacteria are already waiting. This isn't empty space. It's a fermentation tank running around the clock every single day of Clover's life. The bacteria do what her own enzymes never could. They pry the fiber apart, and in the process, they produce B vitamins, vitamin K, microbial protein, and short-chain fatty acids that Clover can later recover through psychotrophy. Even the bacteria themselves, once digested, become a source of protein. Here's a number worth sitting with for a second. Secotropes, the soft pellets we're building up to, are remarkably rich in protein and provide a substantial share of the nitrogen her body reuses each day. Her gut bacteria can produce far more vitamin B12 than her body ultimately requires. Clover is, quite literally, farming her own multivitamin on a schedule without knowing it. Layer 3. The midnight batch. All of that fermented, nutrient-dense material gets packaged into a completely different kind of pellet, soft, clustered, coated in a thin layer of protective mucus, almost like shrink wrap. Rabbits often produce this particular batch overnight or in the very early hours of morning, exactly when Clover is resting, quiet, and rarely being watched by a predator. In the wild, that timing isn't a coincidence. A rabbit with its head down, mid-snack, is a rabbit that's vulnerable. Doing it under a cover of darkness may also reduce the risk of being noticed by predators, adding another possible survival advantage layered on top of a nutritional one. Layer 4. Eating it twice, on purpose. Clover reaches down and takes the soft pellet directly, swallowing it almost whole, barely chewing. The mucus coating isn't an accident either. It acts like packaging, shielding the fragile nutrients as they travel back through the stomach's acid, all the way to the small intestine where they finally get absorbed for real. This is the second pass, the one that lets Clover recover nutrients she couldn't absorb the first time. Compare that to the dry, hard pellets you normally spot in the litter box hours later. Those are true final waste, first pass leftovers, already stripped of most of the nutrients worth recovering, never meant to be touched again. Two different products, two different jobs, made by the same rabbit inside the same day. Zoom out for a second, and the whole system makes even more sense. Wild rabbits live mostly on grass, abundant but low in calories and packed with fiber they can barely break down on the first try. At the same time, a rabbit standing still in an open field, calmly chewing, is an easy target for a hawk or a fox. Over time, Evolution favored rabbits that could solve two problems at once: squeeze every last usable calorie out of cheap, low-quality food, and do the riskiest, most exposed part of that process somewhere safer. Producing that nutrient-rich batch during their quieter resting hours quietly helps solve both problems at the same time. It isn't just clever biology, it's clever timing. Here's a small tip if you own a rabbit and want to know it's genuinely healthy. Don't judge it by the dry pellets in the litter box. Judge it by whether you only rarely see the soft ones. Rarely spotting a cicatrope isn't your rabbit being tidy. It's your rabbit successfully completing its own supply chain, start to finish, without you ever noticing. But here's the catch nobody puts on the neat textbook diagram. The clean version of this story assumes a young, healthy, fully mobile rabbit. And real pet rabbits don't always stay that way. An overweight rabbit, or one with arthritis, or one recovering from dental surgery, often cannot physically bend down far enough to reach the cicotropes as they're produced. The recycling batch gets made right on schedule. It just never gets collected. Vets often see this in older or heavier rabbits. Uneaten, smeared cicotropes left in the cage, mistaken by worried owners for a symptom, when it's actually a warning sign of restricted mobility and a coming nutrient shortfall. If soft cecotropes are left behind, some new owners mistake them for ordinary droppings and clean them away, convinced they're doing their rabbit a favor. They are, without realizing it, clearing away dinner. If you're a rabbit owner watching this and suddenly feeling a little guilty, here's the practical version. Don't panic and start leaving the cage uncleaned just to be safe. Simply watch for a pattern. Soft, uneaten pellets showing up regularly, especially in an older or overweight rabbit, is worth mentioning at the next vet visit, not treating as a 5-alarm emergency. Sometimes the cause is as simple as diet or mobility, but it's worth having your veterinarian help identify what's getting in the way. Diet plays a role too. Rabbits on a high-fiber, hay-based diet usually produce healthy cecotropes as part of a well-functioning digestive system. Diets that are too rich or too low in fiber can throw that balance off. The system is constantly responding to diet and the rabbit's overall health, quietly adjusting every day. So why doesn't every plant-eating animal just solve this the same way? Turns out they don't, and the differences are honestly kind of beautiful. Look at a cow. A cow is a foregut fermenter. It ferments plant fiber early in the digestive process using a multi-chambered stomach, then brings it back up to chew as cud. No second bathroom trip required, just a very long, thoughtful chew. Now look at a horse. A horse is a hindgut fermenter too, technically running the same basic system as Clover, but a horse generally skips the recycling step and instead relies on eating enormous volumes of forage throughout the day to support its nutritional needs. Same underlying problem, 3 completely different solutions. A cow chews twice before swallowing once. A rabbit swallows twice. A horse just eats more, constantly, and calls it a day. And you mostly sidestepped the whole fiber problem by externalizing it through cooking, grinding, and farming, instead of evolving any kind of internal recycling system at all. Every time you cook a meal, you're doing something that makes digestion easier before the food ever reaches your gut. So your own gut never had to evolve a Clover-style system of its own. You even took it a step further with refrigeration and food storage, essentially freezing the clock on decay instead of racing it with a specialized gut the way Clover does. 4 different animals, 4 different toolkits, all shaped by evolution to solve the same basic challenge. How do you get enough out of food that doesn't easily give up its nutrients? So the next time you catch a rabbit doing something that makes you want to look away, don't reach for a tissue and don't reach for the phone to call the vet just yet. That is not a bathroom accident. That is Clover's second pass at the same meal, shaped by evolution to squeeze one more useful meal out of a plant that fought hard not to be digested in the first place. In rabbits, evolution found an efficient way to get more out of every meal. What looks like one of the grossest habits in the animal kingdom might actually be one of its most efficient. And remember that stove of yours we mentioned a second ago? Every time you reheat leftovers, you and Clover aren't so different after all. You're both giving yesterday's meal another chance, even if Clover's version is a lot more biologically impressive. What's one other gross animal habit you've always wondered about? Drop it in the comments, and Clover might just eat that question right up too.